Good evening, and welcome to our City Council meeting for October 22nd, 2019. I'll call the meeting to order. Before we stand, I have a group of young adults here who want to lead us in a Pledge of Allegiance. So if I can have PAC 911 come on up. Okay, and come up to the mic, and someone start with your name and why you guys are here, and then everyone just state your name really quick at the podium, and then we'll start the Pledge of Allegiance.
Hi, my name is Cadence. We are PAC 911.
Okay, and you're here for your which badge?
Building a better world. Building a better world.
Thank you. Okay, and we'll have everyone else come through and say your name.
Hi, my name is Teddy.
Hello.
Hi, my name is Idris Alfaro.
Nice to meet you.
Hello, my name is Cadence.
Hello, nice to meet you all. My name is Caleb Christian.
Hello, my name is Landon. My name is Zachary.
My name is Francesca.
All right, so we're going to go ahead and stand, and when everybody's standing and ready, you guys may start. Go ahead.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thanks, kids. Okay, roll call, please, Miss Jones.
Mayor Ortega,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Thomas. Here. Councilmember Lauer.
Here.
Councilmember Thompson. Here. Councilmember Koch. Councilmember Applegate. Here. Councilmember Geek.
Here.
I have 6 members present, and Councilmember Koch contacted staff prior to the meeting of his
Yeah, and he did call me, and I probably should have told you, but sorry.
That's okay.
He is not here.
Connie passed on the message.
Okay, we will get started. We have an addition to our meeting tonight, just a real quick one, under presentation, so we'll go ahead and move right into that. It's an awarding of a journeyman lineman certificate to Zach Cimino. And Cody, how you doing?
Good. Good evening, Mayor and Council. The City of Fountain Electric Department would like to recognize Zach Cimino for his accomplishment of completing the apprenticeship program to become a journeyman lineman. In order for Zach to achieve his goal of becoming a journeyman lineman, he had to complete 8,000 hours of specific work processes of on-the-job training, as well as 576 hours of related academic training and testing through the Merchant Job Training and Safety International Correspondence Program. This training is the equivalent to an associate's degree in line work. Zach's hard work, perseverance, and dedication to complete this program have made him a valuable asset to the City of Fountain Electric Department as well as the electric industry. Please join us in congratulating him on his success.
All right. All right, Zach, thanks for putting in the time to get it done. I know it's a pretty hard task, but it gets you to a point where we need you anyway. So thank you for being willing to come work for Carl and the department. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Carl, you got a good group of guys over there. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right, we'll keep plugging away. Item number 4B, Board Commission Committee Appointments. We have an appointment of a council representative to FURA Board. Mayor Pro Tem.
Oh, man.
It has you listed. You want me?
Yeah, roger that. And so typically in the past, going back to Lisa Cochran, essentially what's happened is that FURA usually has or would like to have at least one council representative that sits on the FURA board. I've sat on FURA for the past 8 years, came on when Harold Thompson was also a member. And so, to be honest, I don't know if this is somewhat premature to do this now, or wait until the new elected officials come on board when we actually start delegating boards and whatnot. But, right. So what are your thoughts?
I think it's okay since I think it's me that we're looking at doing since I've been attending meetings as well. And no, I thought we had an alternate position, but we don't technically. So in some of our other boards, we have an alternate position. And if they go, they could still vote. Here I've been going, but I haven't been allowed to vote on
Right.
items because we don't, it's not a true alternate position.
Right,
So,
exactly.
I think Kimberly was hoping to get that taken care of.
So essentially, you think it's okay to move forward and, well, I guess we're gonna be appointing you, right?
Well, if everybody votes on it, yes.
Okay. So, with that said, I guess I'd like to make a nomination for Gabe to fill the permanent role of the FURA board representing city council on that board
And it's to finish that term,
and to finish out the term of
2023, I think is what it said.
2023.
Ms. Thompson?
I'll second if you really want to do it through 2023, huh?
I don't know if, well, probably not, since we have to get, replace Phil since he's getting off, so
Right.
we'll see.
Okay.
Okay,
Uh,
we have a motion and second? Okay, please vote.
6 yes, motion carried.
Okay, great, I just
Congratulations.
got more meetings, so. All right. No, I've been going to meetings as well and keeping up with FURA and all the stuff that they do, and they do a really good job of that board, so we'll continue moving forward. City Council agenda requests and announcements. I'll start with Mayor Pro Tem. Anything else?
Man, you trying to throw me under the bus today, but that's all right. Yeah, actually, I do have a couple things. Over the course of the last month and a half, I've essentially lessened my role in council due to a lot of family illnesses, deaths, been to several funerals. So I'd like to start by thanking each and every one of you for showing me and my family support during that time. Well, I had that time to take time off and reflect on a lot of personal issues, a lot of accomplishments that I've partnered with several people in the city over the course of the years. When I came back full-fledged to get back to my council schedule and everything, several things were brought to my attention. And to be honest, a lot of things disturbed me. And for those of you that know me, I'm pretty straightforward. A couple things that bother me, looking at ballot initiative 2A, I've had several phone calls regarding that. I've had conversations with individuals who have questioned the city's integrity regarding if that initiative passes, where those fundings will go. There are rumors, and I really don't like, I'm not going to use the word rumor. There are lies that are out there that have indicated that council will take such proceeds if that initiative passes and will distribute that money to other operations or other needs that the city has, which is a flat out lie.
It's a lie and it's illegal.
And it's illegal. And John wasn't scheduled to be here this evening, but I asked him to come in because I wanted him to talk about how often we're audited as a city. I'm glad that Troy is here because Troy can spell out what could essentially happen if such an illegal practice did take place. And, but before I let them go, I would really like to clear some of my thoughts. You know, it's not easy sitting up here. When you have the opportunity to sit on that side of the bench versus this side of the bench, I want you to know that all of us take this job very, very seriously. because we have an impact on the future of the city, on people's livelihoods. When you talk about raising taxes, when you talk about putting ordinances in place that could essentially hamper a person or family's life, when you talk about city improvements, when you talk about all those things, a lot of times, and I was guilty of this at the beginning, of having a vendetta. A lot of friendships have been destroyed in this city, going all the way back to medicinal marijuana, recreational marijuana, and some of those destructions still exist to this day. And it's just disheartening for me to also hear about rumors about certain individuals wanting to get appointed just to dismiss certain staff members in the city of Fountain. I'm first to admit that when I first got on council, I had a lot of anger, a lot of animosity towards certain people. But I had to mature and I had to look at the bigger picture. And the bigger picture wasn't about me and my feelings, my friends. The picture was about what was it that I could do as a councilman to better the city of Fountain. The big picture was about what could I do to make Fountain a place for my family to call home? What could I do to ensure that the future of this city is enhanced in a progressive manner? It saddens me that some people have an objective to take us backwards to where we once were. It saddens me that people want to undermine the progress that we have made as a council. I make no joke, when I first got on council, there was a time a majority of people sat up here with a gun. And the reason they did wasn't necessarily for the public. It was because of the threats that they thought they might have deemed towards one another. Gabe has done a phenomenal job organizing this council, but it goes back prior to this council. Honorable Patty St. Louis, Jim Koch, Gabe, all of us, we weren't always allies. But one of the things that we did, we took our differences and we put them aside, and we learned how to work and cooperate with each other. And once we learned how to do that, a friendship blossomed. Now, I'm not gonna make a secret, none of us always get along. But we try to work and meet in the middle for the common good, not of ourselves, but of everybody in this city. In my opinion, Scott has done a phenomenal job assembling the team that he currently has. From the police department to the finance department to the fire department to his deputy city manager to our city attorney, and the list goes on and on and on and on and on. And it just really hurts to know that some people have a personal vendetta that they want to remove certain people from the city. And they have the goal to put that on the platform when they're out campaigning. So we're going to go back for a second, and we're going to move to this lie that's being spread about how the city of Fountain intends to take funds from Proposition 2A if this initiative does pass, and it is a lie. And it disturbs me when people spread fictitious rumors knowing the truth. So I would like to start with John. Could you please inform everyone of how often the city does get audited? Could you go through the steps of an audit? Could you also inform the public? And I want specific details, and I'd like them laid down in layman's terms, and I would like you to present it so this troop back here can even understand it. And then once you're done, I'm gonna go to Troy, and I would like Troy in layman's terms well enough so that these troops can understand what can essentially happen if state laws, federal laws are broken with misappropriated funds. And so, John, you have the floor.
Excuse me just one moment. I appreciate everything you're doing. I want to make certain that we do not cross over into discussing 2A, that we're only going to be discussing the audit that has been completed already on moving Fountain Forward funds that have already been brought into the city.
I have no problem with that, Councilwoman Thomas, but what I would like
Thompson.
to Thompson, I apologize, is the lies that are being told in retrospect if this bill passes. I didn't say if I was for it, if I was against it. I want to be very clear. I want to talk about the lies that are being spread about what the city's intent is. I have two experts over here that are getting ready to go on record and talk about not only this proposition, but future propositions in the misappropriate spending of funds. John?
Before you do that, we want to keep it succinct and quick because we do have an agenda that we need to get through as well. So I understand you have stuff you want to get out there, so
Okay, I will be brief and as simple as I possibly can. We are required by state law to have an audit by an independent auditor. That independent auditor comes in usually before the end of the year and takes a look at all of our processes and makes sure that we have internal controls set up such that no funds are misappropriated. That auditor then comes back with a team and takes a look at all of the money that is spent in every fund, including moving Fountain Forward and particularly the Streets Improvement Fund, and looks at the invoices that were paid and the checks and ensures that only the money that was spent out of those funds are for those funds. That if it's budgeted and appropriated by council, that it is only spent in the manner in which council has approved for it to be spent. And so all of the Moving Fountain Forward funds can only legally be spent in the way they were budgeted and for that specific purpose. And the independent auditor, the one we have right now, comes down from Denver, takes a look and makes sure that we do that. If we don't do it, then in his report to us, he will not give us a clean opinion, and then that report goes to the state, and we are in violation of state statutes. So all of the money that is received in taxes, sales taxes, for those funds is only spent for the purpose of those funds and can only be spent that way. As far as what the legal implications afterwards, other than the fact that I'm a CPA and I would risk losing my license, and it certainly wouldn't be worth it for me to do that. The auditor, if he didn't report properly, could lose his license. Outside of that, I know that Troy knows there's some other legal ramifications.
Thank you, John.
And so kind of my summary of what John just said is, number one, it's impossible, and number two, it's impossible to get away with. That's kind of how I thought about it. If someone were to try to get away with it, what would happen if it was a staff member? They'd be terminated, obviously, and we would refer that conduct to the district attorney's office for criminal charges. Official misconduct is the charge that they'd be charged with. It's a Class 1 misdemeanor, carries up to 18 months in jail and $5,000 fine. And then depending on the amount that was misappropriated, and depending on the exact circumstances, would be fraud. That would be a felony, which would carry prison time. So, that somebody would basically have to stare down the barrel of prison in order to misappropriate the funds. On top of that, if it were a public official, an elected official, that were caught up in a huge scandal like this, it would make national news, quite frankly, if a local official were misappropriating funds like that. But the Colorado IEC, the Independent Ethical Committee in Colorado, which reviews ethics complaints of public officials, would do a thorough investigation, and 99 times out of 100, that investigation will lead to removal from office. And so there's lots of ways that can happen, but basically, in Colorado, any sustained IEC complaint ends up being the basically political death to whoever does it if they're an elected official, and to include those criminal charges. So there are quite a bit of pretty extreme consequences that somebody would have to risk to try to do something that there'd be no way to get away with. So, the answer is it's impossible. No one would be dumb enough to do it. Is kind of the simple answer. The scouts aren't back there anymore, but I certainly think they would understand that it's just there's so many checks and balances in place, and the risk it just wouldn't happen. It's just impossible.
Add one last note, and that is I've gone back and looked at all the audits since the time that Moving Fountain Forward was passed, and I have put on a table all of the revenues that have come in and all of the expenditures, and I've accounted for every single dollar, and it's all been there, and it's been spent the way it's supposed to be. If anyone would like to see a copy of this or has any questions or would like to talk to me, my phone number is 719-322-2033, and I'm happy to answer any questions about it.
But I think we need to be clear, this does just not pertain to Moving Fountain Forward. This pertains to any ballot initiative in the future that pertains to any type of tax increase from the cities. Once that money is appropriated for such a initiative, those funds have to go directly for that.
Frankly, it's any money that the city has.
Yeah, roger that, yeah. So, and I just wanted clarity on that because, once again, as I said, I've been having a lot of people approach me, telephone calls, questioning me about the integrity of the city, not with just this initiative, but prior. So that's it. Geek, do you have anything on that?
I'd just like to add that I'm 100% in support of what Councilman Thomas said. And there's no way this should be going on. It hasn't been going on, and I've been here for 6 years. Plan on being here for 2 more, and it's not happening.
Okay. Anything else?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Nothing from you, Mr. Geek? Mr. Applegate?
I've seen the same false information. I know what he's talking about, and I totally agree. Last Wednesday, I did chair the Pikes Peak Regional Building Department's Advisory Board, and I found out some really nice things there when we had a little speaker from the Economic Development from the Springs. One thing is, they do it a little different than we do. They hire people in different parts of the country to recommend their city and everything. We can't afford that, but boy, that was impressive the way they do that. And their lodging tax, they never call it that. They've got acronyms and other things, and they've got it passed, and now they're going to increase it. And if we ever want to do that again, we need to think about renaming. That's all.
Mr. Lauer?
Just wanted to say I appreciate the Mayor Pro Tem's comments. Could not agree more. Thank you for bringing those up, and that's it for me.
Ms. Thompson?
Yeah, John, that chart also is available online on the city website. So if they didn't want to call you, I'm trying to go through how you get to it in my mind, and I can't. Excuse me. Moving Fountain Farmer webpage, which is under Economic Development, or you're not being heard.
Go to the area that says residents, then you go down to About Fountain, then you go in and Moving Fountain Forward webpage.
And it's not the first tab that pops up, it's like the third one in or something. Okay. Okay, thank you. So, all right. So I have some questions tonight. We're going to play quiz the staff over here. If you didn't get a card, relax. Okay.
Why did I get 2 cards?
Because you're special. You got 2 cards. Okay, so the weather is going to change tomorrow night and possibly Thursday. Is trunk or treat going on, rain or shine?
Mr. Trainer will make that call. He'll, if it is just cold, then it will go on. If it is too much snow or too much rain by any chance, he'll make that decision by noon, and we'll put that out again on the city webpage, Facebook, other social media if he makes a call. If not, if it's just cold, he'll have it.
All right. Okay, so bundle up, because I got a lot of candy, and I doubt Sam's Club wants to take it back. All right, Todd, what is being built next door to Les Schwab? You should see how many theories are out there.
Next to Les Schwab, have started construction on a car wash. So that's something that has been requested up on the hill, and it's going to be a full-service car wash.
Full-service car wash. So now we'll go from having none to having two.
Correct.
Because there's one over in the Sam's Club, and which is busy all the time. Then we'll have one here, and
Then we've also got two self-serve, one in Alegre neighborhood, right off 85. We've got another one over by Camden. So in the city, we'll have 4 total.
that's going to be really important, because I've heard that CDOT is adding salt or something to something different in the mix this year, so we're probably going to want to wash our cars as soon as that crap gets on it this year, because I've heard it's something that you want to get off. Okay, Chief Heber, why would a police officer take their car home?
The only police officers that are authorized to take home car are ones that are on call, similar to water or streets or electric. They have to respond. Those members would be members of the command staff, detectives, our version of a SWAT team, which we call Rapid Response Team. It's a level 3 SWAT team. Those are the only persons have a dedicated take-home ride. Everybody else in the police department, where they're working in the patrol division, shares their car with their car partner, which means when they're on duty, they have access to their car. We do this because of the Don and Doff law that's passed, and various states interpret that law separately across the country. In Colorado Springs Police Department was sued about 7 years ago, lost a lawsuit on Don and Doff, and had to pay out $9.2 million. For us, it means donning is putting your equipment on. Doffing is taking it off. If we allow them and tell them to bring their personal vehicle in, then we have to pay them for all that time. So when I did the rough calculations for the budget meeting, 45 minutes to get dressed, 45 minutes in reverse to take it off and go home, we'd end up spending about $300,000 in overtime, depending on the cop, depending on the position. So we do that in order to not have to pay that money, which is Colorado state law. We learned a lesson from the Colorado Springs Police Department lawsuit, and we try and be a good steward of our taxpayers' monies.
So the savings of the $300,000 with them driving it home, and the city obviously paying for the fuel, right?
Yes.
We don't spend nearly that amount of money in fuel, is that correct?
That's correct. You know, we try to do, fleets have been a great partner. We updated our fleet. They're more fuel-efficient cars. They're V6s. We have a couple of hybrid cars that we use in our detectives division. So we've tried to maximize our vehicles, which are very good. And hats off to Fleet and Sam and the crew.
Okay, Curtis, why are we changing out the water meters?
Our existing water meters were at the end of their useful life. Let me try to do that a little louder. Our existing water meters have reached the end of their useful life. They are remote read, automated meter reading meters that allow us to drive by and capture meter readings. They were installed in the year 2000 with an anticipated life of 10 to 14 years. So this is a planned project. We knew it was coming. We're halfway done. We've got about 4,400 of the 8,800 water meters replaced already, and it's going to take us another 1.5 to 2 years to finish the project. So this,
Okay.
this is because of the battery life, and we had planned on this.
Okay, and so this is being done, and coincidentally, I think some citizens are concerned that their bill seems to be going up. So if a citizen is concerned about their bill seeming high, who would they contact?
If any of our customers would have any questions about their utility billing, I would encourage them to contact our customer service department at 322-2010.
Okay, I have one more, not for you. Todd, back to you. I'm sorry, Chief Heber, back to you. Okay. Got him nervous because he knew he didn't have another card, right? All right. If a citizen had the police department out to their home, or their neighbor had them out for some reason, and they were not satisfied, they still had some concerns over the call.
Sure. Happens all the time.
Who would they contact?
A variety of reasons. They could come down to the Fountain Police Department, ask to talk to the on-duty supervisor or on-duty lieutenant. We have lieutenants now that are on police duty probably 18 hours a day. That's step one. Step two would be to contact our professional standards division. They can do that via our website, under Administrative Fountain Police, our organizational website, under Administrative Division, Professional Standards. There's an email link, goes directly to Sergeant Gilbertson, who supervises all his, our internal affairs and will investigate and get back to that person within 24 hours. Secondly, they could call general police number and get somebody to help them at 719-322-2000, or the Professional Standards Division at 719-382-4213.
Okay.
Yep.
Because if they're not satisfied, we want them to do the best we can to answer their
Absolutely.
questions,
And
you know.
if they're don't get the right answer, please have them ask for me. I'm there, work for the citizens. I'm happy to help them.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. I don't have a whole lot other than I agree with statements said before. It's always, social media has turned into an opportunity to create your own narrative without having the facts. And so, and that goes all the way federally. I mean, it's gotten really bad across the gamut of everything going on. And so what I've learned to do is just stay away from it. And then you don't see it. And I think a lot of people are just becoming more frustrated with everything that goes on online. And it's your choice to either believe it or not. But it's also your choice to actually seek out the real facts. I can hear a story from somebody, and I may choose to believe it or not, or I may choose to go out and find the facts for myself and understand. But it's become very easy to create your own narrative and your own story, and that's the way the world is going. So, unfortunately, those things happen, especially when you get into politics, even at the small level. In good old Fountain, Colorado, we see it the bigger, fish, and you're dealing with state and federal, and nobody knows what's true anymore. So, if you have questions, definitely call. There's people up here that are willing to talk. There's staff members who are experts in what they do. It's their livelihood. It's what they do for a living. And they have families that they support and take care of. And the same with me here. And I've met with the Boy Scouts today and the Girl Scouts yesterday. And one of the questions was, what's the toughest thing about being the mayor or council member? I said, having to make decisions for an entirety of 30,000 people and trying to understand what does that look like for the entirety of the community. And realizing that there's an entire community you're making a decision for. And there's so many things that go on in that decision, and at the end of the day, it affects me too. I drive the same streets, I drink the same water as everybody else does, and so whatever decisions I make affect me and my family as well. And as you said, we don't take those lightly. I know it's easy to say that, and easy to come up with the conspiracy theories, which there are millions of them, and it's funny. All these years I've been doing this now, and even prior. The thought of people sitting in a dark room coming up with secret projects or whatever, I don't get it, but whatever. So we'll go ahead and keep moving forward. No other announcements. Again, if we choose to cancel the trunk or treat on Friday, it's probably because of more moisture than cold. And so we've gone out and Halloween night, and when you're bundled up and coats and everything over your mask, we'll still do the same thing here. We're still planning on around 3,000 kiddos, and so hopefully it'll be a fun night for everybody. And after, or sometime towards the end, they will start Beetlejuice, and they'll have it showing here on the lawn. So if you want to stick around and watch Beetlejuice with the kids, that's another opportunity to do that. So I'm looking forward to Friday night. We will move on to public to be heard. Citizens may address our council on items that aren't on the agenda. Please sign up with the city clerk prior to the meeting. Council may not be able to provide an immediate answer, but will direct staff to follow up. And out of respect for the council and others in attendance, we ask that you limit your comments to 3 minutes or less. I have 2 cards tonight. I'll start with Commissioner Gonzalez.
Evening, Mayor, council members. Lojinos Gonzalez on behalf of VFW 6461. Just want to highlight you on some upcoming events. Starting next week, we've got our Halloween haunted house over at the VFW on the 25th and the 26th, beginning at 7 p.m. and on the 27th, beginning at 6 p.m. That's $5 per adult or $3 for kids ages 12 and under. After that, Colorado Springs is having the Veterans Day Parade on the 2nd of November, which the VFW will be participating in as well. And then on and back on the 26th for Halloween, there's a 2 to 4 p.m. On the 26th is a kids' Halloween party, and then there's a 7 p.m. On for adults, and there's a 6 p.m. homeless veterans where they get to feed a bunch of the homeless veterans from 6 to 7 in between those two events. So it should be a lot of fun activities next weekend. And then on Veterans Day itself, there's the traditional 8 a.m. Flag raising and breakfast over at the American Legion Post 38. I know the city will be doing their event, and then at 11 a.m. The VFW would do their flag raising and ceremony at 11 a.m. at the VFW, followed by a barbecue, which is for donations. And that's all I have pending any questions. Oh, and then the steak dinner on the 8th of November is Friday night.
The city one is at 10.
10 a.m.
Yeah.
Okay. And at the Mayor's Park, and so yes. Anything else?
I'm like, oh, that's coming up. Okay, thank you for the information. I do want to thank you personally. And I've had the opportunity, I think, to be in 3 different meetings in the last week with you. And y'all have to know, he's one of our hardest working commissioners we've had in a very long time. He goes to meeting after meeting. I think he has 4 more meetings after this one. So, you're all over the place, and you're watching out for the entirety of the county, and not just for your own district. But I do appreciate everything you do for the city of Fountain and the representation you give us and the VFW and everybody else. So it's not often that you'll have a commissioner for a county coming to a city council meeting. So I do appreciate that and your partnership and everything that we do.
Thank you, and I appreciate everything you guys do for us.
Thank you.
God bless.
All right, thank you. All right, Mr. Rick.
Gordon Rick. Just want to take a quick moment to say thank you to the utility department, and in particular the electric department. Over the last month in California, they had 2 million people lose power because of 50 to 60 mile an hour winds. They had to shut it down. 50 to 60 mile an hour winds around here seem to happen like every other week. And our utility department, our electric guys keep the lines up, they keep them going. And I just want to say thanks for not putting us in the situation that California's been in the last month. Thank you, Curtis.
All right. Yeah, thanks Carl and the guys too, because the best examples last year I'll say last winter, when we had the bomb cyclone come in, and those are some heavy duty winds, and I know at my house it only flickered. I know some other houses had to go out, but then there are others who are in other service areas, and they were out for a while. So I know you guys work super hard, and that's a tough job, and we appreciate everything you guys do.
Carl's men were climbing poles that night.
Yeah, that's a tough job. So I couldn't do it because I'm afraid of heights. So, really. I'll see you after the meeting. I have no more cards, but I see Miss Karen up, so come forward.
Hi, I'm Karen Johnson with the Fountain Valley News, and I'd like to introduce our new editor. Her name's also Karen with an I, Karen Hill. She's really excited to be here, and I'll let her say a couple words if she wants to.
Yes. She's Karen A. I'm Karen B.
Okay.
I'm happy to be coming on board as the new editor, and I look forward to meeting a lot of you in the coming weeks and months. It's a busy season right now for the city. So anyway, I don't live in the city of Fountain. I'm about a block or 2 outside of the limits, but I sometimes lie a little bit and tell people I do just because it seems easy. But anyway, I look forward to meeting you, and I just want to let you know if you ever have anything that you want to discuss. I'm right over there, so please come and say hi, and if you don't, I'll come and call you. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, welcome.
Oh, and I want to add, she has kids that go to the school district, so she's real interested in school news. And her husband's at Fort Carson, so we're going to have more military news, hopefully.
Oh, great, awesome. All right, thank you. Okay, we'll go ahead and keep moving forward. We have a consent agenda. All items listed on the consent are to be considered routine and will be approved with one motion, with no separate discussion on these items unless the council member says and requests, in which case item may be removed and considered separately. At the discretion of the council, we have items A, B, and C. Mayor Pro Tem.
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda unless anyone would like to remove an item.
Okay, Ms. Thompson?
Actually, I would like to move it, but I would like to remove item C, please. For
Item
just a
C.
short presentation from staff, just explaining to the public online and in the audience the purpose of that business improvement district.
So you have no questions about it, you just want to explain it again?
Oh, yeah, and then ask some questions. She's going to be really short.
Okay. So we have a motion already. How do we handle that, Troy? Because we already have a motion, but now she wants to pull something. Okay, are we okay with that then? Okay. So are you okay with that?
Yes, by all means, I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda minus line C, resolution 19-061.
Okay. So we have a motion.
Push the wrong button.
Mr. Geek?
I'd like to second that.
Okay, we have a motion and second. Please vote. Oh, you have to reset. Okay. Please vote.
5 yes, 1 no. Mayor Ortega voting no. Motion carried.
All right, item 8, old business. Second reading of ordinance number 1739, an ordinance amending section 2.02.140 of the Fountain Municipal Code regarding the manner in which to address the council. Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Last city council meeting, you met Alyssa, who presented this item. There had been no changes, and unless there are any questions, that's all I have for second reading.
Okay, and this is just to kind of clean things up for our streaming and protecting a little bit of people's privacy.
Yeah, just so people don't have to say their address when they come up here.
And if you want to say your address, you certainly still can. Ms. Thompson?
I just would like to reiterate, like I did at the last meeting, that I would like to just have them state whether they're a resident or not. And I know people didn't agree with it, but that's okay. I still like it.
Okay, Mr. Geek?
I make a motion to approve ordinance 1739.
Mr. Lauer?
A second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Please vote.
Five yes, 1 no. Councilmember Thompson voting no. Motion carried.
Okay. Item 8B is a presentation of the broadband feasibility study for Fountain's electric service territory. Hold on one second. I don't want to have to stop in the middle of this, so would it behoove us to take a quick 3-minute break? We'll take a 3-minute break. I saw one head shaking yes. What's that? It's too late.
I was going to tell you just to give them to Gordon. He would give them to me.
Okay, we'll get started here in a couple seconds. Before Lisa gets started, just to update everybody on this, we kind of got a draft report about a month ago. And so this is kind of we're at the point now where we got to start making some decisions and hear from people and some things. So what I would like to do at this point, let Lisa and her team do the presentation. And then if you have any super burning questions that you think need to be asked at that time, it's got to be quick because there's a lot of information. I read through the packet and I didn't count, but there's probably 1 million pages of reading, and it got really hard after a while. But there's a lot of information. It's a decision that we want to be very informed on, and I do appreciate you and the team that's put the work into this, because that's a lot of information. This is a ton of information, and so listen with an open mind to see where this is going to go. There have been no decisions made. I know where I would like to go with this, but if it's not feasible for the community, then that's the way we won't go. And if it is feasible and we can make it work, we'll do everything we can to make it work successfully and efficiently for the public at large. So with that, we'll let you kind of do your presentation, and then I will have council kind of do a back and forth, and then I will open it up to public as well at that point after. So we can kind of work it that way. So just to give everybody a heads up of how we're going to do that. So write down your questions as you have them, and we'll get through it. Okay?
Okay, thank you.
There you go.
First, I just wanted to introduce our consultants. We've got Chris Konieczny and Doug Dawson, and I wanted them to present their findings from our feasibility report. So we had the initial findings that we came up and presented on the 8th. And so these are our consultants. We've worked with them for the past, I want to say, 4 to 6 months. So if you guys want to come up and take the floor.
That was a short introduction, so she really got to the point. So we're moving along here. So I don't speak very loudly, so if I stray from the microphone, make me go back here. So my name is Doug Dawson. I'm the president and owner of CCG Consulting. I live in the other little tiny set of mountains in Asheville, North Carolina, the ones that you don't think are mountains. We are a very large consulting firm. We have 1,000 clients in the broadband business. That includes 350 other cities. So we've done this a whole lot of times. Almost all of the cities you've heard of in the business have been our clients, the vast majority of them. And we also have a lot of little telephone companies and cable companies and people as clients. So we've been doing this. This is our 23rd year, and all my folks are like me, and we all have gray hair. We've all done this for a living for a very long time. And so we're here today to figure out how the clicker works. Aha. So the study was to look to see what it would take to build a network in the city of Fountain that would deliver gigabit broadband to everybody in town if they wanted to buy it. So that's what we were asked to do. We were hired under a competitive RFP, so I think other people also made proposals to you, and we were happy to be selected to do this. I have to say that your team was one of my favorite teams I've ever worked with. Your whole staff was highly engaged in this. They really pushed us, which I love. They asked us a million questions, and so before we even delivered the study, they were already out looking at some of the recommendations I was getting ready to make. So your team was extremely proactive, and that's actually quite a pleasure to work with a city who's this excited about it. So it was very nice. So the study includes a bunch of parts, which Chris will talk about. He's from Finley Engineering. They did the engineering analysis, which is the big number. What does it cost to do this? And he'll talk about that in a minute. We did a residential survey, which I will talk about, which had an interesting set of results. We also then did a financial set of business plans. I think there's probably 40 or 50 of them to really kick the tires on what this might look like if you decided to do this as a business. We looked at the legal and regulatory restrictions on fiber. We talked about how after this study, the city can reach out to its citizens, because it is a very thick study and there's a lot of stuff in it. How are you going to distill that down and get that knowledge out to the public? We looked at, how are you going to pay for this thing? Made a lot of recommendations there. And then finally, the written report that you talked about was actually a few less than 1 million pages. I'm sorry it felt that long.
It's okay.
But, you know, hopefully you found it to be readable. We try to write for the general public, and it's not full of jargon, so hopefully it was understandable.
Actually, yes, that was one thing I did notice about it. I'm like, I can keep up.
Yeah, well, thank you. That's exactly what we try to do. I mean, you're actually the audience for this, not the carriers, not the technical people in your departments. So, the first thing was, you know, we did a survey, and it had what I called tepid results. You know, everyone in town was not in favor of buying broadband from a new network, and so that's one of the key findings of the study. Is what we found was somewhere between 50 and 56% of the people would likely buy broadband from a new network within the first 5 years. If you do a really good job over time, that would climb. The city of Chattanooga had very similar results on their broadband survey, but now they've been in the business, I think it's going on 12 or 13 years, and they're up to like 68% penetration. But that's one of the highest in the country. So the question is 50 to 56% good enough to make this work? And that's one of the questions we had to answer. You know, it was not an outstandingly high result. It also wasn't negatively low. It was sort of right in the middle. We also found, you know, we always look at these studies, they fall into 3 categories. Sometimes the study is so good, it's like, before we get out of this meeting, you should go ahead and hire somebody and start building it because you're going to make a ton of money. We don't find that very often, but we have found that a few times. Sometimes it just looks so terrible that you should absolutely not do it. And we've always told people that, so we're not afraid to tell you it's a bad idea. You're more typical of what we normally find. In fact, your study was sort of dead in the middle. It's like, well, this can work, and it could work very well, but there's a lot of risks, and you could also do it in such a way that it doesn't work. And what that tells us, that's what we call the gray area. So you're in the gray area in the middle, which means before you ever decide to do this, you'd need to answer all those questions you talked about. You need to ask a lot of hard questions, make sure you understand every answer so that you go into this knowing everything you need to know about it. And I think you have a team that can and will do that. So, but you know, it's not a no-brainer to do this. You know, building a fiber business is a challenge, and there's a lot that you need to do right. And the biggest challenge you have, which is on this list, is, you know, your city has actually done almost everything you need to do to the business. You already run a very complex technical business in the electric business, so you already know how to do all that. You know how to deal with customers, you know how to bill customers, all that good stuff. You know how to work on poles and handle wires, but you've never really sold in a competitive environment before. So that's the one big thing the city would learn how to do is how to sell stuff to people who don't have to buy it, because your other services you have a captive monopoly audience for. So that'll be your biggest challenge. We'll get into a page later, but there's a lot of, you know, the reason we put the study in the gray area is there's a couple of factors that really change the answer. So I'm not coming here and tell you there's one answer for the study. Something as simple as the interest rate on bonds changing by 0.5% changed the long-term cash by like $5 million. So, you know, because this is a very capital-intensive project. The capital cost about $38 million to build this thing. So the interest rate really matters. And so when you have those kind of variables that can change the answer a lot, you just have to pin those down. You would have to say, I'm only going to borrow this if the bonds are between this number and this number. So that's the sort of thing you'll do before you decide to get in this business. So we also looked at something called open access. Open access is where you would build the network and you would let any ISP who wants to come and serve on the network. You would own it, but they would be the ones who would deal with customers. It looked absolutely atrocious. I mean, we could not find any way to make the math work. And the reason is fairly easy. If you're the retail provider, you know, the bills may average $80 or $100 for the triple play of telephone, cable, and broadband. As an open access provider, you build the same network and you only charge about $30. The math just did not look good. So that was out. It also looked, because you're in a gray area, it was a bit of a challenge to find a partnership at work. And by partnership, I mean you and an ISP do this together and somehow split the revenues. And because you're in that gray area in the middle, there's not a whole lot of profits to split. This thing can be profitable, but it's not profitable enough to make a private ISP all that excited, probably. So partnerships are not impossible, but they look to be a challenge just because of where the financials popped out, which kind of means it's sort of like probably your best bet is either you do it yourself or you don't do it. Or there's a third possibility, which we're actually seeing several cities in Colorado do, which is attract somebody else in here to do it and don't put any of your own money into it. So that's a third possibility that's actually quite a realistic one. So, I mean, I think there's ISPs who would find this to be an attractive market. So, so the survey, I want to put a few caveats in front of that, because surveys in general have a bad name. I mean, and that's because of political surveys. Political surveys often the answers don't seem to be realistic compared to what really happens. And the reason for that is people lie on political surveys. You may not tell the guy on the phone who you never heard of the truth, and so, you can't necessarily believe the answer. Business surveys, we don't find that. My company's been doing these surveys now for about 20-some years, and what we have found, and we've seen those surveys then go to networks that get built. These surveys are a very good predictor of how the customers really are going to react. The purpose of the survey was not to find out who likes the idea of fiber. It's really to find out who doesn't like the idea of fiber. We want to count the people who are not going to build fiber. And the only way you can do that is with a statistically valid survey, which is what we did. And so, I feel very confident that those percentages we're predicting are very realistic, because we've done this so many times and then had people build the networks and they actually, got answers very close to what we've said. And the reason for that is people have no reason to tell you anything but the truth. Are you interested in fiber or not? It's a fairly simple yes or no question, and they usually tell you the truth. So, 91% of the people in Fountain already have some sort of landline broadband. It's actually one of the highest percentages we've seen in the last 3 or 4 years of surveys. This town has a lot of people who already have it. That's an extraordinarily high percent. The nationwide average is about 87%. So you're actually higher than average on that. It's almost 50-50 split between CenturyLink and Comcast, and that's actually another extraordinary thing, because in almost most of the world, Comcast has killed the phone company. It's usually like 80-20. And so CenturyLink still has a lot of customers here. That was quite a bit of a surprising finding. You have 79% of the folks who have cable TV. That's about 9% higher than the nationwide average. So folks here really like their cable TV. 55% of the people were in favor of the city building the fiber network, with 21% just said they needed more information, so they very well might be in favor of it as well once they learn more. 22% said they would definitely change to the city if you build a network. 23% said they would probably change. 22% said they might change. After doing these surveys for many years, those numbers are what we boil them down, and we came up with the 50 to 56% range of what people would buy. So, it's sort of an in the middle survey, and we have an in the middle sort of set of results because of it. So, network design, I'm going to turn it over here to Chris for a minute. So.
Hello, my name is Chris Konechny again with Finley Engineering, and we partnered up with Doug on this study, and when you look at the goal of bringing gigabit service to every, home resident and business in the city electric service territory, the only way to do that is with fiber. So we designed a very high level, a fiber to the home network that would pass everybody and provide them that level of service. I'd like to also echo what Doug said about working with your team. They were phenomenal. There was a wealth of information in the GIS database that allowed us to efficiently and accurately design and price this network. It was by far the most information that we've had to deal with on one of these studies. Another thing that really made a huge difference in the study is the state of the aerial electric plant, and that you guys are a municipal electric. Aerial construction can be 30 to 40% cheaper. However, the big caveat there is make ready. And when we sent our guys out here in the spring to meet with the city and kind of, poke around and see what's what and try to pin down building costs, it's in a very good condition. And oftentimes, as we've seen in other reports that we've done, it can really hamper the feasibility of these things. We tried to leverage existing assets as much as we can. So number one is the pole lines. Number two is there's a number of locations within the city that have existing underground conduit, and that is being expanded under a project that the city is jointly pursuing with Verizon. That dramatically saved a lot of costs on the network as well. We're gonna get a little technical jargon. I feel like I'm obligated, since I'm the engineer here, to do that. But a PON network is really a passive network, and it's really the best bang for your buck when it comes to building these fiber optic networks. That being said, it is a very future-proof technology, and it's about as future-proof as you can get in the technological world. We're seeing all the R&D and development from major manufacturers go into this arena, and we really feel confident that it's the lowest cost, best option for you guys. You know, it's very capable of delivering 1 gigabit today, and there's already technologies on the market that can scale that 10 or even 100 times. When we looked at the city, there was approximately 359 miles of aerial fiber that would need to be constructed and 293 miles of buried. That is almost a direct reflection of what the electric plant is. It's about a 45-55 split. There might be slightly more buried just because of the logistics of how you get into the actual homes there. And then there's some statistics about passings, and this is primarily a residential community, so we've got 15,000 homes, 1,200 apartment units. That's, you know, individual units, not buildings, and 370 business and other institutions. This is kind of hard to read here, but there are full copies in the written report. It shows some preliminary routes that could be used, and there's a number of locations on there. The city network would likely have its central office or network operations center at the new city services center. There's some space being allocated there, and we would utilize a number of existing city fiber routes, conduit routes, and overhead lines to construct redundant routes throughout the city. That would lead to a very reliable and cost-affordable network. And this kind of shows schematically more of a stick diagram of just how everything would work here. The real thing I want to show is that it's mostly a ring or a square. What that provides is redundant pass through network core equipment, so that if any one of those fibers were cut, traffic could be rerouted and not take down the whole city with one single incident.
So this is the big number you hired us for. So this is the one that everyone goes gulp over. So the fiber network, to build it everywhere, everything that he's described is $38 million. Most of that's fiber, and most of the cost of fiber is labor. I mean, it's very expensive to have a lot crews come out here and build the fiber. So it also includes fiber drops. That's how you get from the street to everybody who signs up for the fiber business. And then there's electronics. There's core electronics that he described that sit in 4 huts, and then every customer gets a piece of electronics either onside their house or inside the house that lets them talk to the fiber network, and that just adds up to all those millions of dollars. We had a discussion today while we were here about ways to trim these dollars, and we always try to be very conservative, and we think there's some ways to trim these, and so that's one of the next recommended steps for us, is to look harder at these numbers. And you're in the lucky position to have a city that, for example, one of the ideas might be that your staff does some of this work, which would save a tremendous amount of outside labor. You know, even if they only do a little bit of it, it's a big saving. So there's a lot of ideas. In fact, your city already, he said what a great condition your poles are in, and they are some of the best we've ever seen around, because your crews have already spent the last couple of years cleaning up all the problems on the poles, which is a great thing that they do. And they didn't necessarily do that for fiber. They did it to make it easier to make repairs in snowstorms and that sort of thing. And so that same kind of effort can help to pull these numbers down. So the next step after the study will be to find ways to make this more affordable. We've sort of given you the most conservative, ugly answer, because that's what we want to do. We don't want the real project to cost more than these numbers. So, again, what we looked at 3 big models. The city is the ISP, the open access, and the partnerships that I already described. And in the city is the ISP or another ISP coming to town looks like the most attractive of those 3 options. The financial, again, we used that 50% penetration rate, so we didn't even use the 56%, which was the high end of the range. And then we looked at all the various variables I had mentioned, and it turns out that you know, using revenue bonds instead of general obligation bonds adds some costs, and it's very likely you would use revenue bonds for this. Revenue bonds are bonds that would rely on the revenues from the fiber project to cover the project. So, but that, in doing that, that costs money. You always pay a higher interest rate for revenue bonds. The interest rate was very big. I mean, changing interest rate 0.5%, meaning from 4% to 4.5%, for example, would add almost $6 million of cost to the project over 20 years. Prices were very sensitive. A $5 change in the starting price for broadband changed the answer by $15 million. That's, again, also one of the higher numbers we've ever seen. These numbers are not the same for every study they do. They don't affect everybody equally. And so price sensitivity is a really big issue. And that leads to the question of, you know, we also had a discussion today, and we've been talking to your group. You know, the philosophy of where do you price this thing is one of the biggest decisions. It's probably one of the hardest decisions to make. You could price this network to give everybody in town the cheapest broadband possible, which means you would run the company to barely make any money. You could run it to make money and put the prices fairly high, and most cities decide to go somewhere in the middle of those two. They want to make sure the business is successful, but you want to pass on savings to customers. And so that's sort of the prices we use. Our study started with a starting price of $60 for broadband and had several products above that. But that's not a cast in stone number. That's simply we had to pick a number to get the study started. When you look around today, that's becoming an affordable price. Comcast just raised their prices $4. I don't know if you've seen them on your bills yet, but because I'm in the business, every time an ISP changes their prices, I get like 50 faxes and emails. And so I got a whole bunch of people going, look, they raised my rate. So that just went up $4. And so, you know, the ISPs didn't raise broadband rates for almost 10 years, but now I think they're going to start raising them every year. They've all said that that's what they're going to do. So, you know, a city can actually save your residents a whole lot of money in this business over time. Another big issue in this study is staffing. We gave a very conservatively high staffing plan that would hire 16 people. Some of those may be existing people, but we think that probably could be done with several less people, which would also make a big impact on the study. So that's another one of the things that your folks are going to be looking into. So the study we gave you offers broadband, cable TV, and telephone service, and you buy those things externally. Nowadays, you would not build this big head end with a giant dish and look up at the satellites. You would buy that stuff over the internet wholesale, where you would buy it and just stick it on the network. So that actually makes this a fairly easy business to run, because you're not in that business of, you're not really a telephone company, you're not really a cable company, you're a fiber company that puts the stuff on their network. So it's actually an easier business than what some other people do. So again, we looked at all sorts of ways to improve it. The study is full of recommendations on how to improve it. In fact, those are the next steps we recommend. Let's see if we can't get a better answer out of this than the one we gave you. The interesting thing about, because your poles are in such good shape, you can actually build the fiber up in the power space, meaning up where the electric wires are, and then you can put a thing called a drop down, and you can put the way that you get the customer's house is lower. That's a fairly new technology that's only been around a couple of years, a technique, and it saves a ton of money because you can build up in that space really fast because there's nothing up there. There's nothing above the power lines. It's very clear and open. And so that's actually the way that we price the study out. For you, it makes perfect sense to do it that way. So the models are very, very, very conservative. We don't have any home run revenues, just like, are you going to sell internet to the schools? Are you going to sell some 5G cell sites? Those kind of things that you would likely do if you had a fiber network here. We wanted to stay conservative and not assume you would sell those sort of things. The chances are that you very much would do so. And again, the bond rates are probably the most critical in your study compared to any study I've seen in the last 4 or 5 years. That just happens to be one of the ways the numbers turned out. So, again, open access simply didn't work. I'm not going to repeat that again. The public-private partnership, there's just not enough profit in this particular business plan for you to pay an ISP a whole lot of extra money to make this thing work. So, and because you're in the electric business, I don't know why you would really want to do that. I mean, you already have the technical capability to do this. So, next step is kick the tires on the financial models. I had barely even talked to your staff about the financial models. They were already doing 40 more versions of them. So they've already kicked the tires pretty hard. I don't think I've ever had a client do that before. So they're well into that step already. So look at cost savings ideas. And we, in fact, we talked about cost savings all afternoon today. There's some very good ideas out there to save money over the numbers we gave you. Look at other models. There's a lot of new developments probably going to be built outside the city over time, and you could build to those. You don't have to stick to the electric service territory, even if you don't serve those folks for electric. You can go to a brand new subdivision and build fiber for like 20% of the cost of going to an existing place and doing it. So those are really good opportunities. We didn't put very much of that in the model either, and that really makes it better. The survey showed that there's a lot of need for community education. There were a whole lot of folks that said, this is really complicated, I need to know more. We actually had quite a few folks that was their answer to a lot of the questions. So I think if you're even thinking about doing this, you need to start that education process. You need to look at city processes. We didn't find any, but you need to look at things like how you do permitting, how you do inspections. You don't want to get in your own way and make it more costly to build your own fiber network. If you already have rules on the books, we're going to recommend that somebody take a look at all those processes and maybe come and recommend a couple changes to those rules, which may take some sort of an ordinance or something. Those rules would also make it easier for anybody else who wants to build in the city. So you can't do it just for yourself. But there may not be anything like that. Chances are there's going to be a few rules that should be changed. You definitely need a timeline. We actually talked this afternoon about several different timelines, and then and dig into the financing scenario. I believe that within next week they're having some meetings with bond advisors to really start looking at the money, because that's obviously the big issue here. So we also looked at a digital divide scenario. Is there a way to make sure that everybody in town gets internet? Can we find a low price product that we can get into the school so every school kid has internet? Because today what we have found is that the 9% of people that don't have internet in this town, the chances are most of them don't have it because they can't afford it. Affordability has become the #1 issue for why people don't have broadband. It turns out, we only looked at a couple options, but it turns out there's probably some interesting ways to do that actually still make you money. So it's to both your benefit and to the citizens' benefit to get internet into more houses. And then risks, I could talk about these all day, and maybe this is where the questions will go after the meeting, but you hear about 5G. 5G is not going to be a threat to this network. The fiber network will outproduce 5G by a factor of many times over. 5G is going to make a much better cellular product, but there is one version of 5G where they beam internet into the houses that could have speeds as fast as your network. But for somebody to do that, they would have to build that same $38 million network. Nobody is going to do that. I mean, there's not going to be 2 fiber networks in the city. If you build fiber, nobody's going to build a 5G network. The chances are no one's ever going to spend that $38 million in this town to build a fiber network anyway. I mean, that's very expensive for the revenue stream here. That's only going to happen in the core of big cities. I mean, it's too expensive to do in towns like this. Comcast is probably the most powerful competitor in the country if you're going to build fiber. And so that's one of the reasons that we're probably only seeing a 50% positive response on the surveys. A lot of people do like them. They have very powerful bundles. Today they offer you probably one of the cheapest cell phone plans you can buy anywhere. So, they're a very good company. No one likes their customer service, but people like their performance. So, again, the ability for the city to actually turn into a sales staff to be able to go out and to sell people will be your key to success. And that can be learned, that can be hired. There's lots and lots of folks who have done that. Again, I've got 1,000 ISP clients. most of them did not know how to sell before they started, and most of them became very good at it. So again, 100% revenue financing adds some cost, but that's okay, as long as you can afford it. So that's our contact information. Feel free to send us questions after today. If if we don't answer all your questions today, feel free to shoot us an email. We'll answer any questions you have. The more you hear about it, you will definitely have questions. So that's we tried to keep this presentation short, so let's start with the questions you have.
Okay, Mayor Pro Tem.
Just a real quick question. Now, if we were to go into this venture alone, not having a partner on the ISP side, how difficult would it be to have somebody partner midstream? Is that typical? Do you know if that happens quite a bit? Is it difficult for somebody to get on board later on?
I've only seen that a few times, but it's not impossible. It's certainly possible. Let's just say that, you get the network built and you get to a certain size and you just decide that you would like at that point to bring a partner in. That would not be that hard of a transition. That certainly could happen, yeah. So
The likelihood of that happening, though, is do
you would
think that
probably
be
only do that
difficult?
if you were struggling. If you were successful, I don't know why you would want a partner at that point, but if you were not getting to where you wanted to go, you could certainly bring a partner in. Bringing them early, the problem is there's not very many profits in the first 3 or 4 years, and that's what the real problem is. Once you got up to the point where there's profitability, that would be a much easier thing to do, so, yep.
Okay, thank you, sir.
But at that point, if we're making profits,
You probably are
wouldn't
not
we
going
bring
to want a
someone in?
partner, but you never know.
Yeah.
I mean, things change, so.
Okay. Other questions from council? It's a lot of information, and there's just, you couldn't figure out a way to get us out of the gray, though? I mean, that's the hardest part about this whole thing is we're in this gray area. and
Well, let me put some color on that, which is a good thing to do to gray, right?
Yeah.
One thing, I never come here. I'm not recommending you do or don't do this, because
Right.
you didn't hire me for that. So, I mean, because this is your own decision to make. And so, there are a number of scenarios that look very positive. And the reason it's in the gray area is if you don't do it well, you may not land in one of those zones. So as long as you do it well, this looks pretty positive. And so so this is not one of those where it's a 50-50 fail or pass. If you do everything right, it's more like a 90-10 pass. But it's still not 100%. There's still no guarantee of success here. And that still assumes that you tackle that whole long list of books and issues so that you do get all those things right. So as long as you get everything right, this is a pretty good looking opportunity. The other thing you have going for you, which a lot of cities don't have, is the growth, because as I said earlier, the growth areas get added on cheaper than the parts of the town you already have, and over time that should make the business better and better, and we didn't factor that in. We said, let's look at what you got today and see if
potential growth that's coming.
Yes.
It's not factored in.
It's not
these
factored
numbers.
in
Okay.
because that could make it look good when it wasn't really good.
Right.
What we care about is what you got here today. Can you make money if this is all that you ever had?
Because we have areas that are platted, they're ready to go, and we've been sitting on them. Not we, the city, but
Right.
those owners and developers have been sitting on them for years, and so who knows when they decide they want to pull that trigger.
Well,
but-
before I lived here, I lived in Florida, and I can tell you about subdivisions that have 10, 20,000 plots in that have 7 houses on them because a crash came along and all of a sudden they never got built. So you never want to count on those.
Right.
We could do a version of the model to show you what happens if they all come, and it's spectacular, but you don't want to count on them. If you can't make money in what's already here, that should make you pause.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
But we can't take it out of the gray area because 80% of the studies I do are in the gray area. The answer is if you do it right, it's good. If you don't do it right, it's bad.
Right.
I mean, that's why you're in the gray area.
Okay. Well, and it really for the surveys too, because it's just so split down the middle. It's not often you see that with surveys, where they're you're kind of I don't know. So the other question I had when you mentioned
actually, in cities your size, that's actually what we normally see.
Really?
In small, if you go to rural areas, if we went outside of town where there's like no broadband, it would be 80 or 90% people who want it. And if you go to big NFL cities, it'll be like 20% of the people want it. In cities of this size, we normally see that 50 feet.
Okay.
People either hate, there's this core of people who hate the incumbents, there's a core of people who love the incumbents, and then there's all these people in the middle. It usually comes out about 50-50, and that's what we normally see. The question is 50% good enough? And the answer is it can be, so, yeah.
You should be here when we talk about trash.
I know. I'm pretty glad I don't have
a
to
question
do
that came up and I read it in the study as well, and you mentioned it tonight about home run revenues, and so I'm thinking of like a school district, because we have one big school district here, possibly a second that we could tie into if we need, or bring in if we needed. So the question is, and maybe Lisa knows this answer, have we brought this to District 8 to see what they would think, or are we're waiting on that to, let's see if we can get something going and then maybe offer them something later?
Yes, I brought it to their attention. They're aware of it in their IT department. I've also talked. Sorry. Yes, I brought it to them, but I brought it to their attention. We haven't had a lot of conversations about it. There are some other large entities. I talked to the Fountain Valley School and the dump out on Kane, and they're interested.
Okay.
So we're starting to reach out to some entities, but we're leaving it very open-ended, saying we're looking at this as a potential. We just want to know if you guys have any interest in it. We'll continue informing you, but not.
Okay. And it's hard for them to commit anyway until there's something actually there. And one of the other that I learned as well through all this is a lot of businesses, kind of your national chains, they have a product that they have to go with because of what the mother company wants to go with. So even though we may be providing something good, they're not allowed to really go away from what they're doing. Is that correct?
Most of the big nationwide companies buy from one vendor nationwide, and that company may come and buy from you, but they probably don't. They probably will come and buy from Comcast, right? So.
Okay, yeah, because I know that the conversations come up around businesses and things like that. So when we're looking at those bigger national companies that we're getting a little bit more and more of, we can't really rely on them because they already have a model that they have to follow.
Right. What you will do, you'll do really well in the mom and pop local businesses. They'll love you. So yeah.
Right.
So.
Okay. All right, any other questions from council at this point? Okay, I'm going to have, go ahead.
Can I close up a little bit?
Sure.
So the one thing that I want to mention before we bring it on to public comment is 4 things that we just want to bring up. Is right now we're looking at, we've hired a financial consultant to help us look at, first off, our limit on borrowing. Because we want to make sure that if we can or cannot borrow all at once, if you guys want to move forward, what our borrowing capacity is for now and in the future, and how that's going to affect projects in the future. So we're looking at that right now. And with that, right now it's looking at that there may be a possibility that we couldn't borrow it all up front. So that changes an approach if you want to move forward as an ISP. So with that, it's looking at the control rate, the rate of implementation, and different things of using internal labor of what we already have. The other thing is to internally work more as the make ready. So I just wanted to make sure that I wanted to bring that to your guys' attention. We're having a conversation with that consultant on Thursday.
Okay.
So we'll have more information, and I'll provide it to you.
Okay, the other question is after we're done here this evening, what do you need from us?
And that's why I'm coming up here.
All right, thank you.
We've already put some thought into that, Mayor.
Okay.
Just wanted to remind you that tonight we're not asking for a decision. We're not asking for specific direction. This is a report from our consultant, really to augment the information that we shared with you a month ago.
Okay.
And wanted you to hear it directly from them and be able to do some Q&A with them. So the next steps, and I was really pleased with our visit today about some of the alternatives that we have in front of us. Some of the things that might help us get out of the gray area or get to a place of less risk. So we have more work to do. That includes figuring out what we can do with bonding. So we really need to work on alternatives and sub-alternatives probably over the next several weeks. And then council, we're going to need your help at that point. And I think that would be in the form of a follow-up workshop similar to how we kicked this project off. To get with you, start to discuss alternatives, have some really good back and forth with you all as council.
Okay.
And then start to see what the direction looks like that we feel would be the appropriate way that we would go.
Okay, and the new council will be able to be a part of that as well?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. All right. So really no big decisions tonight, just really more information and questions from public and.
Yep, this is informational, and it really gives us a chance to hear the questions, not just from you, but
Okay.
in a few moments from the public as well.
Would another part of it getting out of the gray area would be figuring out ways to inform?
Absolutely, and you heard many different times that part of this is going to have to include community engagement.
Okay.
And community education, so that we can gain a better shared understanding of what this project would look like and what it would deliver.
Okay, all right. Mr. Lowry, your light's on?
Yeah, I just had an additional.
Oh, sorry,
comment.
go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, I was done. So relative to to this presentation tonight as well, this directly ties into the city strategy. So this presentation tonight is tied directly to a very specific objective where the utilities director would provide the initial results of the feasibility study to council that would trigger council to make some decisions and provide guidance back to city staff. That would then trigger a discussion about developing some additional objectives that all support the city council's strategic priority of enhancing the telecommunications capabilities in the city. So just wanted to note that this action tonight, and this presentation tonight, is directly tied to the city strategy, and the timelines that are established in those objectives right now are slightly behind. Not that that's important, but just a data point that the goal in the strategy was that by December of this year, the utilities director would be able to provide those additional objectives, or essentially next steps in this process, back to city council and the public. So I just wanted to be sure that everyone was aware of that.
And for everybody who wants to know, it's picture number 4 up on the wall.
That's correct.
Okay, Mr. Lauer.
Okay, I don't really have any questions per se, which might seem weird from the tech guy, but a lot of my questions have been answered along the way. I was pretty heavily involved with the team prior to the heart attack and not so heavily involved afterwards, but Lisa's constantly reached out and kept me in the loop. So a lot of my questions came early and sort of shaped a lot of what we've seen in every version of the study and the presentation. But a couple comments came to mind that I wanted to make sure I said before they escape my mind, since that is happening more frequently sometimes these days. Number one, I do not consider 5G a threat, even a tiny bit of a threat. This market, I have heard from a number of folks who've told me pretty reliably that this market is not looking at 5G for somewhere between 7 and 10 years. Because there's so much capital expense involved in getting the number of towers put together that they need to put together. And yes, some of the telecoms are kind of glomming together to make that not so expensive for each of them. But then there's not nearly as many 5G devices as you might expect on the market yet. So that's a limiting factor. And then there are some interesting things coming out of Europe regarding the health impacts of 5G, which are having much more influence in the US than any sort of health concern for anything RF has had in the past. And those things are sort of delaying some of the rollouts. And even in bigger areas where the rollouts have already been taken place, Verizon, for example, is starting to throttle back a little bit on what they're rolling out because they don't want to have huge amounts of protest with the info that's coming out of Europe regarding some of the 5G stuff. So for me, it's not a concern. And then the other flip side to that coin is if they do invest in some 5G, there's also some infrastructure that needs to happen between the towers that if we had the fiber network, we could actually potentially get in on that as well. And even lease out some of our capacity, potentially. I mean, no guarantee, obviously no guarantee, but potentially lease out our capacity, some of our excess capacity, if you will, to provide some of the infrastructure that the telcos need for the 5G, which may be another possibility going forward. So that stuff doesn't bother me at all. Aerial fiber doesn't bother me at all because I've worked at Thule Air Base in Greenland, where we had aerial fiber for the last 35 years, and in 35 years, only 2 fibers have ever broken. And Thule Air Base is routinely dealing with 120 and 140 mile an hour winds if the aerials are put up correctly. and with some consideration, which we're already well prepared for that, that's never gonna be a concern for us, and even if it is, there's so much redundancy that Chris has built in, to his design ideas, that, the idea of aerials doesn't bother me at all either, quite frankly. You know, the thing that does bother me, trying to be a responsible steward of taxpayer dollars going forward, regardless of which kind of a bond would be issued. You know, the thing that bothers me is, on a personal, man, if I'm looking purely on a personal basis, I want to be the first customer. I want to be the first guy in the city to get this into his house. I almost don't care what the price point is as long as it's less than my current provider. And that's really cool. But looking at it from trying to be a responsible steward of taxpayer dollars, I look at a number like 38 million. And I think, okay, are there enough positives to make me want to overcome the risks that I see? If, you know, what if we don't get this many people? What if we don't get that? And frankly, I think a lot of those can be overcome with some good education. We do have enough turnover, strangely enough, we do have enough turnover in the city thanks to the military, that some of the education's already been done for us when those guys have come from communities that have had something similar and they know how good it's gonna be. And in the other cases, if they're coming in from areas where they haven't seen that, then we've got a clean slate to basically market to the new military coming in. So for me, I mean, I'm not saying, you know, I'm gonna go for any particular model or anything like that. I'm just saying, for me, some of the bigger concerns that have been raised, I think can be overcome with some good effort, and or in a couple of cases are not even things I'm personally concerned about at all. So.
Okay. All right, so at this point, I'm gonna have you guys just kind of hang out, but we're gonna bring up, if there's any public that'd like to have some comment or questions on this as well, so, here's an opportunity. Please come forward.
Hi, my name's Chelsea Mansour. I live in Fountain. This is the first time I've ever come to a city council meeting in my life. I'm 33. I don't own a landline, and I'm never planning on paying for cable. All I care about is the internet. I want to be able to stream my Netflix, my Amazon, shop online, whatever I want to do. I don't want to see commercials. I don't have time for that. So I'm interested in how Doug performed his survey to the residents, because I wasn't surveyed for this. Doug?
It's a random survey, which means we called, I think we had 370 completed surveys, so obviously we didn't talk to everybody in town. It's not, talking to everybody is called a canvas. Because we did it randomly, and we also called cell phones and landlines, it's a pretty reliable survey, and statistically what that gives you is 95% reliability plus or minus 5% in each of the answers, which is pretty accurate. So, you know, the answers could be off by as much as 10%, or they could be almost exactly right, but that's the range that you get for the survey. So that's a typical business survey, which is a high accuracy survey, but it's still a survey. I mean, you know, it's never 100% sure, but it's a range of sureness that we get, so.
That's why we have the margin of error.
There's always a margin of error, yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Doug said something else earlier that caught my attention. He said, as long as it's cheaper, he's happy. And I think with as much as I love cheaper, I think with the $60 or $70 is ridiculous, and I would be robbing Fountain blind if I got a gig of internet for $60 a month. I pay $75 a month for 150 megabits per second, and I think that's fair. What I don't think is fair is that Xfinity only gives me 60 megabits per second every time I do a speed test. And with the gig, with the fiber internet, I'm gonna get what I pay for. So realistically, I should be paying much, much more for a gig than $70. And I think everybody else will be laughing when they pay $70 for a gig too. Starbucks pays like $250 for 500 megabits per second, right? The Peaks and Pines, the new brewery, he's about $300. He has a cable and phone package, but I can guarantee you nobody my age cares about phone or cable. That's about it. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you. And a lot of those statements, that's where I've taken my family, is we don't have a landline anymore. We don't do cable anymore. I stream completely off the internet. And just for full disclosure, I work with Comcast right now because they have the most speed I can get in this city. I was with CenturyLink, and they couldn't even compete. And I was paying more for CenturyLink. And so, and when you have two teenage girls in your house that are constantly on their phones, it helps with that as well, if you're into that type of thing. But I am concerned about the price point because there are families in this town who that's going to be a big piece for them, and if we can provide that service for them, I think that's what we have to really look at. And if we can do it better and cheaper than everybody else, then let's do it. Go ahead, Greg.
Yeah, I think one thing to consider that may not have been clear, and Doug can correct me if I'm wrong, or Lisa can correct me if I'm wrong, but $60 as a price point was not the blanket deal for a gigabit. In any of the modeling that we considered, $60 was sort of an average for kind of like the same level of service that a guy like me gets currently, is what we were looking at in those models. So it would be kind of a sliding, for lack of a better term, kind of a sliding scale thing. So a gigabit would be a bit more expensive, and so forth is unless I just completely misunderstood things.
Yeah, we have again, you're gonna have to come up with your own pricing, but our model had a 3-tier pricing, 60, 75, and 90. The gigabit was 90. The 60 might be 100 megabits. I mean, you all have to decide what the speeds are, and then the 75 would be something in the middle, say 300 or 500 megabits. So now you could set them in any other set of numbers. That's just, we had to start with something in the study, and in fact, that was one of the longest discussions we had with staff, is where we're going to set the prices in these models. And the feeling was those all felt like pretty good prices. They all save people money. So, but they're not cast in iron. I mean, that's right. You're a long way away from setting prices. So, right. Yeah.
Just for the price range that we selected, we looked at other entities around Colorado and what they were offering to kind of line up with those to give us a starting point. Again, they're not set in stone.
Right. Yeah.
Well, among the different municipalities, yeah, that's correct. They have different price points for the different cities. However, we were just looking at a range. It was just a basic starting point. For Comcast and CenturyLink, we don't know exactly. Everyone seems to pay something different. So.
Gordon, Rick, two things. When I talked to Kimberly Bailey about what do we got to do to get more business in here, because the more business we have, the more tax revenue we pull in, the more tax revenue we bring in, the better quality of life we can put around Fountain. She said the two biggest things that businesses tell her is we don't have broadband and we don't have a good road network. An example I would use is out there between Ventana and the bus barn. It's zoned as light industrial. People have told me, if you expect me to take a 53-foot trailer down Old Pueblo Road in the wintertime to get my supplies out there, it ain't gonna work, and I can't get broadband out there. I need something better. So I really would encourage us to look positively at this. I know the numbers are gray. I know the numbers, it's not a sure thing, but I think if we're going to expand the city and get better tax revenue, we've got to have broadband. The second thing, I agree with Mr. Lauer. As long as it's cheaper than what we got, they're going to buy it. We talked about this before. People in Fountain are frugal. If they can save $1, if they can save 50 cents, they're going to do it. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm going to talk as Brandy Williams, non-resident of Fountain. One thing I just want all of you to keep in mind moving forward, regardless of where this goes, is as we witnessed with the monies that I was entrusted with when I arrived, it's a combination of having the money to fund the project and having the right staff to run the project. Because you can get that money, but without, and you've got tenacious staff, every person we hire will tell you that. It's that staff and that motivation and that love of this city and love of doing what's best and doing it right that really gets the projects done. So it's a combination of all of those things, so just keep that in mind.
Right, because we don't want to hire someone who doesn't believe in broadband.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Or understand broadband, but that's different. All right, anybody else?
Darrell Couch, and I'm a resident. I think the only thing that I see that could be well, there's a lot of things that could go wrong, obviously, but I think that 5G is going to advance faster than is being expected by some people, because it's being pushed by industry for Internet of Things. It's being pressed by the automobile industry because of the number of systems that cars are having to communicate with now. It's being pushed by military establishments. So I think you're going to start seeing it more in probably a couple of years. But if your penetration is not deep enough by the time that the system is viable, I think it could drastically affect your penetration and drastically affect your bottom line. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay. Yeah, it's scary, but it's also exciting because of what we can possibly get into and be able to offer our residents, and possibly others who aren't residents, and getting that out there. I hadn't even thought about that piece, but hopefully that's a little bit further down the road than anything else. Ms. Thompson?
I'll just flat admit a lot of that went over my head. I'm sure I'll get a few nods out there in the audience. Fine. I'll ask enough times and you'll explain it enough times and I'll eventually get the majority of it. The one piece I do understand, though, is the marketing, and that concerns me. We haven't had to market ourselves really well, and this is a whole unique product. Having dealt with a lot of new military customers to this area, they have already ordered their CenturyLink or their Comcast or whatever that they had at their old residence. They already have it ordered to be installed, before they get here. They're already moving it, porting it with them. So that's going to be, in my opinion, kind of a tough market to penetrate, because they'll arrive to unload at my storage facility and they're like, well, hurry up with the contract because I have the internet people coming, so they've already done it before they arrive here. So I think we're going to have a really tough piece of marketing to figure out how to get to the people that are moving into this area and not waiting till they're here and hooking up the utilities, because that's too late. That's just going to be too late. So I think that's a really big piece that we have to really research to market ahead of time and figure that out.
That's a good point, because when I'm moving, I want to make sure that stuff's ready to go as soon as I walk into the outdoor, my new home. Yeah.
They don't care if their beds are up as long as their
Right.
TV and their internet works. That's what matters. Yep.
Yep. Yep. Okay, so at this point, are we at a point we can put this onto our website so people can look at this? Okay, so is it on there already?
No, it's not.
No. Okay. So we'll get that, hopefully within the next day or so, the feasibility study, I'm sorry, let me just go with study. We'll get that onto the website so you can look it over yourself. There's a lot of information, and it's a lot of stuff on there to consider and do. And so we look, what's the next step at this point, Curtis or Lisa?
Next up is I want to provide you guys a summary of a meeting that we're going to have on Thursday that just looks at the bonding capacity and our financials.
Okay.
So once we get the summary of that, then we're gonna start looking at some alternatives. And then
Okay.
from those alternatives, we wanna bring those to you and potentially have a workshop.
Okay.
So, and then to develop the next steps.
Okay, and I think the only other thing it hasn't come up, but I'm betting it will. We're not asking people to go to city broadband, and that's the only business that's gonna be in town. And you'll still have your choice to do whatever you want with that. So I wanna keep that up there at the top so that people realize that this is something we hope to provide, and if you wanna do it, you're more than welcome, but just in case.
Yep.
Okay, thanks. Thanks for all the information. Oh, go ahead.
Mayor, another thing that we owe you as city council is just a timeline related to the next steps, meeting with bond counsel, financial advisors, then alternative analysis and development, council workshop, then alternative selection, then implementation. So we'll work on a draft timeline to get to you about what that looks like. Try to see what happens as we go into the first quarter of next year with regard to kind of the milestones ahead of us. But I think we have some alternatives that really look promising, but we need to do some more work. So
Okay.
just want to make sure that you all know we are not done yet. So we're at kind of the next step. And we're going to still be committed to working on this and working with you on this.
Okay, thank you. And thanks to the team internally and the team outside that really got us to this point and moving
Yes.
forward, so.
Lisa has been incredible, and you heard that from our consultants with the work
Yeah,
that she's done.
when you go in and she's going all over the place, you're
That's
like,
right.
whoa.
Yes.
Yeah, it's good stuff, so, okay, thanks. All right, we'll move on to our last item. I think it's our last item. Item 9A, consideration of items removed from the consent agenda. Resolution number 19-061, a resolution to approve the 2020 operating plan and budget for the Riverbend Crossing Business Improvement District.
Thank you. The item is the Business Improvement District for the Riverbend Crossing. They are located at the former Fountain Valley Shopping Center near Main Street and Highway 85. The commercial development is approximately 10.5 acres, and the purpose of a business improvement district is to help the developers fund infrastructure and public improvements. So in this instance, there's a lot of utility infrastructure upgrades that are necessary in terms of the water and sewer lines and improvements to the roadway extension internally. In April of 2019, City Council established the Business Improvement District and appointed the initial board of directors. And the requirement to bring their operating plan and budget before City Council annually is dictated through state statutes.
Okay, excuse me. Excuse me. Go ahead.
Sorry. So this is an aerial graphic of, excuse me, not an aerial, but a graphic of the proposed development. So Highway 85 is here, north is off to the left-hand side of the screen. This is the existing gas station. They are planning to raise the dilapidated buildings and redevelop the parcel into a commercial development. The district has funding for up to 50 mills for debt service and operation. There is planned for 35 mills for debt service and 10 for operation, and they're anticipating that they will issue a $15 million general obligation fund. I do want to note that any of the debt service and capital improvements are all funded specifically through the developer. It is not city funds. The city is not going out for any type of bidding operations for the district. This is the district funding their own internal infrastructure and maintenance costs. The outline of their budget is generally up on the screen, and more detail is provided in the packets that are available online that goes into much more detail in their financials. And staff would recommend approval of Ordinance 1728, unless there's any questions.
Okay, any questions? So again, this is totally encumbered on the business district that is currently working on their business.
Correct. There's no city implication financially.
Right,
whatsoever.
and that's the reason why we did the business improvement district, so that they can take care of the area, take care of their business, all those things without having to come to the city.
Correct.
For those things. So, okay. If no further discussion or questions, what would council like to do? Mr. Lauer.
Move to approve resolution 19-061.
And Mr. Applegate.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and second for approval. Please vote.
6 yes, motion carried.
Okay. Let me get back to something here real quick. Okay, correspondence, comments, ex officio reports, Mr. Evans.
One report's positive for council and those folks that are here. We did receive and were awarded another CDBG grant for next year to the tune of $250,000 for infrastructure costs down in the Southmore area. So we are confined. We have to spend those down in the Southmore area. If everyone doesn't know where that is, that's basically Alegre off of 85-87 in Carson off of 85-87. And that neighborhood is in a lot of need for these type of infrastructure work. So we received that through the CDBG in competition with the county project. So I'm excited that we were awarded that project.
Wonderful. That's awesome.
Curb, gutter, and sidewalks down there.
Awesome.
They need it.
Yeah, really bad. Okay. Troy, anything? Chief Maxon? Chief Heberer?
Very brief. I was able to attend the Young Marines 60th birthday party this past weekend. There's about 60 kids from all throughout the Fountain Valley and El Paso County that were there. Both the commander and XO presented the City of Fountain Award for our outstanding support. The Young Marines used to be housed up north, and they were kicked out of their home, and both myself and Chief Maxton have housed those kids at the fire department, the police department for the last 6 months. They referenced the Toys for Tot. I think, Todd, you remember that? They referenced really the City of Fountain. We bent over backwards that year, about 3 years ago, again, when they ran out of their home for Toys for Tot, and we made it happen, and they were able to do a bunch of toys for thousands of kids. So I was very proud of the City of Fountain, and they were just great kids and a lot of committed people. So I just wanted to pass that on to each of you. I have that award in my office, but that was really a team effort, so thank you.
All right, thanks, Chief. Remember monkey bars after the meeting? Ms. Martinez?
I just want to remind everybody that consideration of the amended zoning ordinance will be coming in the November meeting, and that there's any potential comments or feedback, that we're still accepting that on our website. So please go there and provide any feedback that you have.
Okay, thanks. Mr. Trilch?
Yes, good evening, Mayor, Council. Two things. First is I received an update today from Fort Carson that we should receive word back on our proposed intergovernmental support agreement, our very first one for pest control services with Fort Carson, anytime now by the end of October. So the Garrison Commander, Colonel Wardinger, reached out to Installation Management Command regarding the status of that, and they're expecting very soon to get a response from them. And if it's favorable, we'll be able to move forward with that first actual agreement. The second thing is, at the November 12th City Council meeting, we are going to be putting together a presentation of a very special honor. We received a request from a spouse who lives here in Fountain, whose husband was killed in combat in Afghanistan earlier this year. And so we will be presenting her with a Gold Star banner, which is part of our Military Appreciation Banner program, will be hung on Highway 85-87 to honor her husband. And so just wanted to inform you all that we're preparing for that presentation and that very special honor to that Gold Star spouse here in the Fountain community. That's all I have this evening.
Okay, thanks. Anything from IT? Nope. Ms. Joni, anything?
Nothing.
City Clerk? Okay, I'll run through council again. Mayor Pro Tem, anything?
Just real quick, going back to my comments earlier, I received information that somebody sitting in here had posted that I evidently called all the citizens in here a troop. Keep in mind, I was a Indian guide here in Colorado Springs. I was a Cub Scout here in Colorado Springs. I was a Weeblo here in Colorado Springs, and I was a Boy Scout here in Colorado Springs. And typically, when we refer to the groups, and somebody can correct me if they think I'm wrong, we refer to them as troops. And so going back when I had asked John and Troy to explain what they were going to explain explain it in layman's terms so that even the troops could understand it. But see, that's how social media works here. So now I have somebody that's trying to misconstrue what I said, twist it to benefit them and their agenda. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Geek?
I've had enough.
Mr. Applegate?
Yeah, I wanted to point out, I wanted to point out that I thought that was really great. Doug and Chris recognized our staff as being top-notch. And we give credit to that because we hire people who are the best irregardless of where their residency is.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Lauer?
Yeah, and just to kind of build on that, for the whole time that I've been affiliated with that project team, I can truly say in almost 30 years in the real world, trying to deal with teams across the board, multiple function teams or single function teams, that is literally the best team of people I've ever worked with, bar none, period. There was not a single sentence that the consultants brought up that they didn't already have about 40 extra new ideas before the sentence was even finished. And just the amount of energy that every single person on that team put into the project was literally unparalleled. So many, many, many thanks to them. And I wasn't even smart enough to say it while they were all here. So hopefully Todd will pass that on for me.
Okay, Ms. Sharon?
Which last name to say?
No,
Phil. Gee, at least you didn't call me Brown. Okay, I'm done.
Okay, the only other thing I have is, we did, during consent agenda, approve the new dates for November because of Thanksgiving and Christmas, so, we'll have our regular first Tuesday meetings of each month. Our second Tuesday meetings were moved to, November 19th and December 17th, so, just kind of be aware of that as you, come to our meetings in those months. Other than that, I hope you all have a great Halloween. We'll see you 2 weeks. We're adjourned.